Oh, he's got a background and everything. Is that a real? Like, can you touch that?
Not quite. No, it's fake.
Okay, it's a
Thanks
good
for
fake,
noticing it
man.
though.
It's a
It's
good fake.
part of our branding.
Well, we cropped up the brand, so you should get your brand team to center that a little bit for the squared Instagram life out here. Anyways, we don't need to talk about your background. I mean, big day for you all. December 2nd is the public sale for the Aztec token. You guys have been, I mean, building for a number of years, and also I think put a similar amount of attention and thoughtfulness into how you brought this token to market. So I hope we can dive into all of that. But before we get into any of the details, can you just make the case for why Aztec is needed in the world in 2025?
Yeah, definitely. And thanks for having me on. So yeah, I'm Joe, one of the co-founders, and as you said, we've been building kind of privacy on blockchains for the last 7, 8 years. We kind of ran into the problem of trying to onboard the real world onto blockchains without privacy firsthand. And I think to sum it up in a few sentences, really blockchains today without privacy are dystopian surveillance tools. And I think if we, most people maybe listening to this podcast are from the Western world, and they have some degree of privacy in their financial lives. You can argue maybe not enough, but they have some. And if we're trying to onboard the rest of the world to these new financial rails and give them, a fraction of the privacy we enjoy in our daily lives, I think at best that's immoral, and at worst it's probably something I won't say on a live stream. But it's something that we care a lot about at Aztec, making sure that there's adequate privacy on Web3 and crypto rails, and that's what Aztec solves for. It's a privacy layer that exists to allow developers to build applications that have privacy as a built-in primitive, much like we have on the internet with SSL certificates.
Can you talk about the tech you've had to build? Like 7 to 8 years being heads down to get this thing to market is a very long time. So I imagine there's something pretty powerful.
What's the hard part, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. So we've had a few iterations along the way. It wasn't just kind of like we didn't one shot it. But yeah, my co-founder Zach is a cryptographer and has had to push the field of zero knowledge proofs quite substantially to get zero knowledge proofs to a point where they will run on a device, on a phone, in a very kind of performant fashion. And so ultimately the tech that powers this is zero knowledge proofs, and we've built a proving system called Plonk, which enables very fast proving on client devices, and that's how you get this privacy. You can kind of think about it a bit like end-to-end encrypted messaging, but for transactions on a blockchain, and that's what ZK proofs enable. And so it's taken a lot of work to build that proving system to a point where it works in production, and that's what powers the Aztec network. We've also had to decentralize the network and launch as a fully decentralized network, but that was kind of a downstream problem. Like the underlying technology is zero knowledge proofs.
So help me contextualize where Aztec lives in, say, the stack. Like, what are you replacing? How would a builder kind of think or need to think about building on Aztec?
Yeah, so we're a layer 2 that sits on Ethereum. And so we kind of get to inherit the properties of Ethereum, the consensus of Ethereum. Every kind of transaction that eventually gets settled on Aztec is backed by Ethereum, but a developer can kind of use Aztec to augment their applications with privacy. You can either just use that as like a privacy layer for existing DeFi applications on Ethereum or its other L2s, so a bit like a privacy shield for existing chains, which I'm really excited about. So I want to do something on Base, but I want to get some privacy. I can route that transaction through Aztec. Or you can build net new applications on Aztec that need privacy to exist. Some examples may be like, consumer finance, where you want to get a loan based on your bank statement, but you don't want to broadcast your salary to the entire blockchain. So it depends on the application. Like out the gate, it's mostly going to be people getting privacy for existing public DeFi. But over time, as people explore the design space, we'll see net new applications that require privacy.
So you don't need people to build specific applications on Aztec to be able to leverage the privacy superpowers of the network.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that like our block space is differentiated and is private means that all we need is a user to want to send their funds through Aztec to another chain. When we bridge through Aztec, you get a degree of privacy. You can get much stronger privacy if someone does build something on Aztec, but for some applications like basic payments, public DeFi, it's sufficient just to bridge through Aztec, which is really cool. And I kind of see it a bit like a privacy layer for all of Ethereum.
Can you talk a bit about the, I guess, technical moat you guys have built? Like, is this something that, Base or Solana or these chains that already have a bunch of attention, liquidity, and developers can kind of pull the tech over now that you guys have figured it out, or does this kind of have to be built from the first principles of the chain?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think we view ourselves as kind of like value additive to most chains. Like they're public chains and they've picked their execution environment that likely doesn't have privacy built in. And so we view ourselves a bit like a layer that you can add on to any chain. I think, in terms of the moat, it's around privacy sets. The more people using one privacy solution, kind of the larger the crowd you can hide in is kind of the analogy. And so it is harder for people to pull this into their own chain, especially if those chains have been built from the ground up to be public. We looked at trying to be EVM compatible or one of these existing kind of layers. And if you have an environment that's designed for public transactions, it's very hard to retrofit privacy. And so we had to build a new state model and a new kind of programming language to enable this. So yeah, I think I'd be surprised if someone took it off the shelf and implemented it. It's far easier just to route a transaction through Aztec as a result.
It's still kind of crazy to me how much debate and there is sort of around the value of privacy. I think obviously through the Tornado Cash legal proceedings, there was a lot of folks on one side saying that this is just clearly going to be used by bad actors, and you're building tech that's going to help hackers or state actors trying to sort of route illicit funds. And yet also we're in this era right now where I think privacy is again back on the sort of the top narrative. So I'm curious how you sort of think about the social impact, the good, like the reason this needs to exist.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think like a small amount of privacy is actually quite dangerous. I think if you can just hide a balance and not do much more with that, you can get into these kind of situations we've seen historically. I think what you need for privacy to be useful is for me to be able to tie my identity to a cryptocurrency account. And that sounds terrifying in a world where it's public. Like I don't want to put my passport on chain. I don't want to put my bank statement on chain. But if we have strong privacy, like really strong privacy, the same way we enjoy in kind of Web2, then I'm willing to share that very sensitive information across the internet or across a blockchain. And so I think that's what's missing today. And that's what Aztec solves for. Like if you have an environment where you can make things incredibly private, you can encrypt very sensitive data, then you can actually get the holy grail, which is I can tie my identity to my cryptocurrency account, and we can kind of have the compliance that's needed for various applications, but also uphold user privacy. And so it depends on how programmable something is, like how useful it is kind of I guess my answer. But I think if you have a small amount, it can be kind of.
I think that's interesting. Like the core issue is that we're not actually confident in tying our identity. So we have sort of the civil issues or no distinctions between various actors that are out there. But if we can increase the level of confidence people have, and ultimately sort of allow them to realize the benefits of that through more permissive operation. I mean,
and identity doesn't have to mean like exactly who I am as like my full passport information. That's needed for some applications, but for other applications, it may be sufficient just to know, I'm from the UK, or I have a salary above X. So it's case dependent, depending on kind of what you're doing on chain. You need very different information to kind of make sure the application works as intended. And the goal with Aztec is just to enable developers to make that choice and give them a new primitive to kind of.
Well, I mean, we're clearly going to look back on this era and be like, "What? You guys were just routing your multi-million-dollar transactions through the public."
Like I say this a lot, but like SSL certificates were the same problem with the internet, right? We couldn't do like user accounts. You couldn't have a username and a password before we had SSL because your password was
kind of key tech.
It was like, and we're in that world with blockchain, so it's like it's crazy to me that like there's not going to be these big innovations that are enabled by privacy. And we're going to see where that like plays out over the next 2, 5, 10 years. But it's going to be exciting for sure.
I mean, is blockchain privacy a solved problem now, and it's really about the kind of entering the adoption phase, or is there still tech to figure out for that to be able to happen?
I'd say like the single player aspect of blockchain privacy is solved. So if I want to do something as me, you can use something like Aztec to do that. We're still working with kind of our ecosystem and teams in the space to do like multiplayer privacy, which is kind of, interacting with unknown third parties and making the entire state private. People call this problem private shared state. That's kind of in the progress of being solved. I think in the next year, teams like Tassio and other teams are well on the way to solving it, but that's like the last frontier of what's left. So we're kind of nearly at the top of the hill, but not fully there yet. But we're definitely making kind of leaps and bounds compared to fully public chains with Aztec. So yeah, it's coming along on a long way.
Right. So the public sale goes live today. I think Josh and I are just constantly infatuated with this idea of how do you bring a token to market? What makes tokens valuable? I think it's it's always been a challenging role to be in as a founder, trying to figure out how to thread the needle between what you can say, how to structure it, how the market will value something. And I think there's a sense that maybe it's getting easier right now, but also like a lot harder to do that. So I guess I'm curious, has your token model or how you've envisioned this economy working changed in the last 6 months or a year? Or has this always been the plan and you're just executing against it?
I think it's mostly been the plan. Like we've had this desire to launch decentralized and kind of give the network to the hands of the community. We strongly believe that privacy can't be owned by one entity, and so it needs to be this, almost public good that's controlled by its community, and that's kind of what Aztec is. The network obviously has tokenomics that power the roles in that kind of public good. So it has decent token economics. I think in terms of like actually bringing it to market, over like the last 6-7 years, I've seen a lot of different types of token launches, from the original ICOs through to kind of the airdrops,
Good times.
like full kind of back to kind of some forms of like sales in centralized platforms, and none of them have really worked that well. I think they haven't done kind of the job of decentralizing ownership. And so the main goal with this sale for us is to distribute ownership to those who want to have a stake in the Aztec network, and to power it and to run it, to actually decentralize. And most of the time that happens through kind of proxy decentralization or shadow decentralization, where you don't give someone the ownership rights or the economic rights. And so the goal for us has been to kind of create a fair on-chain launch, use blockchains for what they're supposed to be used for, which is kind of capital allocation tools. And we were able to partner with Uniswap on a new auction mechanism, which is called the continuous clearing auction. And it effectively finds a fair market value for the token and creates on-chain liquidity once the auction ends. And so, yeah, it's been kind of really exciting to see this kind of kick in and work. And you can now use smart contracts in a much more powerful way than you could kind of in 2017 or 2018, and actually do this on chain fully with like transparent, fair allocations. So it's been exciting. It's been a lot of work, obviously, kind of trying to reset the meta on how token launches happen, but hopefully we've done our bit. And I think you get a few moments in life when you can try and reset the narrative. And yeah, hopefully we've done a little bit to move people away from the kind of centralized launches onto more fairer distribution models.
I do think people are slightly confused. Maybe I would assume there's still some uncertainty around what is actually happening in the sort of pre-market auction. Can you just maybe smooth brain explain what the goal is here and what's actually happening?
Yeah, so we have one auction. We let our community kind of place their bids before everyone else, just so that they would guaranteed.
So there's no fixed price. People are basically saying this is how much I'm willing to pay
Correct.
for a token.
Yeah, so there's not a fixed price. It's just, they get to make sure their bid goes in. This removes kind of like sniping, gas wars, like all of the things that go wrong with like traditional auctions where it sells out in a couple of minutes. The CCA doesn't work like that. It's a continuous auction over a longer period of time. And so the community got to go first. That finished yesterday. And now it's just a public auction, and anyone can come along and place a bid. They can express how much they want to spend and their maximum kind of like cap on the price. And the on-chain smart contracts will just guarantee that they never pay more than anyone else in a period for tokens, and they never spend more than their cap. So if you want to spend, $1,000, you set that as your budget, you express kind of your valuation cap, and then the blockchain does the rest. it's a bit like a DCA, and like you can think of it in terms of that as like a simple analogy. But yes, it's an exciting new launch mechanism. I think some people were, thinking about the early phase and maybe just frustrated they couldn't participate. But yeah, it was there for our community.
Well, it's a crazy market timing and everything. But how is it going? Like, what's your sense of how well it's gone so far? Has it met your expectations? Beat them?
Oh, definitely. It's we've achieved the goals of kind of the auction so far. Like we've got to the price discovery phase,
I mean,
and so
it's gone up 1,000 ETH in commitments since I checked it before the show. So just over 15,400 ETH committed to the public pre-sale here.
yeah. So the token's kind of clear in real time from this point forward. So it's everything's working kind of I think as we expected. Price of ETH has not helped obviously, but the auction is in Aztec ETH, so it's actually made things a little bit cheaper for people. But the current market sentiment is not been great over the last.
It's only cheaper if I wasn't holding ETH or if I was using new ETH.
If you were stables, then you're fine. If you're kind of like me and long ETH, then things have stayed the same. Like your bags have just got slightly heavier. And I think in terms of like reception, it's been really great to see kind of the reception from the community, but also we're in a price discovery phase and people are kind of understanding and seeing how the mechanism works. And also at the end of the auction, we'll get this liquidity pool created. And so it's just a great way to actually find the true fair price of a kind of token as it launches versus kind of, having that be speculative on a centralized exchange.
Yeah, we've been excited about this model. I think we've talked to the Doppler team quite a bit about it. I think, as we've looked at various models for launching tokens, clearly this price discovery phase and the limitations of bonding curves in sort of like their blunt application are obvious. I think it's been less obvious to people that this is an alternate path that can actually have similar results, and by results I mean like the demand and interest and a good chart and sort of that speculative mania that I think is valuable, at least I think probably I would say necessary at some level to launch well. And so I think we've been watching Aztec as, I think in the early days, it looked like it was a little slow. I think there's a bunch of barriers to actually getting in and signing up. Obviously, you had to be part of the community to participate beforehand, but clearly the market is liking it right now. So yeah, really exciting, man. I mean, I love just these things that have taken years and years, whether that in their current form or sort of building on prior work to actually bring to market. I truly, I think we are sort of just living in a world where we're used to it being public and all the things that we're doing public. I think when given the alternative path, clearly it's the private path is the one I think most people will take if I'm not making major trade-offs. So I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. I wish you well. I guess you're into, I think December 6th is the close of the sale. So if folks are interested in privacy, interested in a layer 2 that is building the complete privacy stack, you can go in, you can participate, put your bids in at Aztec, sale.aztec.network. We're watching it closely, man. I think we'd love to have you back on once this thing is live. We've sort of seen it in market a little while, and some people start building some interesting things with it. I think it's an exciting category to be watching.
Yeah, I'd love to. Maybe early next year as things kind of kick off with TGE and the kind of network fully going live, we can do a rerun and see what's happened. So yeah, been really fun to chat about this, and thanks for the questions.
Yeah, appreciate you hopping on, man. All the best as you guys approach the end of the sale. I mean, it's so funny, right? At the end of the sale, this is like such a big thing. I know your team has just put so much work into this, and yet it's like
the start,
just the beginning, baby. You have to go do the hard work now.
Yeah, public clearing is kind of the next hurdle. It happens in about 8 hours, so we'll start to see the tokens kind of like streaming into people's accounts, which is awesome. It's just like crazy that happens like on chain without anyone having to kind of interact or allocate. So I'll be watching that, maybe glued to it too closely. But
is there a dashboard for us to follow along, or like how can we watch?
You can see it directly on the website. So yeah, sale.aztec.network. There's a few decent June dashboards as well if you want to get more into the data around like who's bidding. Maybe
can you maybe DM that to us and we'll put it out, because I think people have generally been interested in being able to sort of watch the dashboards as things move forward. So send that
Yeah,
over. We'll get
you can go direct into the auction page without kind of like doing any kind of like checks. So you can have a look and
Oh,
see
right.
it in real time. And I'll
Oh
send
yeah,
it.
okay. Yeah, this is a good place to go check it out. But cool. All right, Joe, appreciate you, man. Good luck.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. See you.
Cheers.